a little behind on time, and so we want to give you as much time as we have. So I'll make this very, very short. This is our fourth form in the Caring for the World series, and we're going to be looking at solar energy this morning. And we have Mr. Jeff Wiberg. Wiberg.
Yeah, common mistake. That's
That was close. From All Energy Solar. Welcome to Elk River Lutheran Church, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. I haven't said anything yet.
We'll wait till the end to see.
Yeah, see if it's worth it. Yeah.
And you know you've excited Luke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Today it's really just talking about and sharing some of the details about private solar, which is what we're involved in, for homeowners, for businesses, for churches, for municipal buildings, for basically anything out there that's for a private system. We're not into the big solar fields and that kind of stuff. So I definitely want to answer questions. I do have a presentation and we'll kind of go through that, but I especially want to avoid just doing all the talking and just showing slides. So I'm going to try my best to kind of make this a little bit more interactive for everyone today. Okay. We are actually a St. Paul company, and we've been doing solar since 2009. I've been with them since 2015. And today, like, the whole purpose of the real conversation is taking back control. So that's, does anyone actually have an idea of what I mean by that, taking back control? Yeah.
Decentralizing the electrical grid a little bit?
A little bit, yeah, that's right. So, it's really the concept of, can you do this yourself? Can you control the resource? Can you control the cost? And is it better for you? So that's the big picture. We can get into property value and other details, of course, but so as I said, I've been with them for 9 years now. Next year, I'm excited to celebrate my 10-year anniversary with them. We're not a small organization, but we are family-owned. And we have a lot of projects we've done around the 3 immediate states, but commercially, we've done a lot of work nationwide. And for us, it's about one project at a time. Our bread and butter, we started in residential, and it just kind of grown from there. But so I do more than solar, so that's why I'm adding a little bit about my extra work. I'm also an election judge. So,
I'm more
yeah.
excited about the ski
What's-
instructor part.
What about that?
I said I'm more excited about the ski
Yeah,
instructor part.
good. Yeah, I've been skiing since I was 5, so that's a big deal to me. All right, so today, just the general topics that I have is to share a little bit more about who we are as a company and what matters to us. We're not the only installer out there, so we always want to make sure that we are a good fit, and for price and work and all that. So I think that's really valuable to understand for any kind of home project that you're doing, is who do you really want to use as the contractor. And I do have some stats and some information about solar in general within the state, how it's grown, as well as our own personal stats, and get more into why people are going solar, why the control and all that, and so on and so on. We have only about, I think, 45 minutes, so again, I want some topics I'll be kind of just glancing over a little bit, but please feel free to ask a question as we're going through this. I am going to leave time at the end as well for question and answers, and just make sure, do a good job of everyone getting the information that they're looking for. So when we talk about our company, so All Energy Solar has been in St. Paul from the beginning. Actually, Minneapolis for the first year, and then St. Paul. And the owners are actually from Minneapolis. They were born in Prescott, Wisconsin, and the family moved over to Minneapolis, so they grew up in Minneapolis. They graduated and went into the solar industry and worked in that industry for about a decade, each of them. They're brothers. It's actually 3 brothers that are really part of the company. And then when they saw the incentives get better here in Minnesota, they decided now was the time. They moved back home and actually started their own business. So that was 2009. So it's Michael, Brian, and then Ben is actually our operations, facility operations for the warehouse. Yeah, easily over, and this is actually a little bit outdated, so I think it's over 9,000 projects installed to date. Yeah, 270 plus employees. We do have, I'm an employee. I'm not just a contractor. All of our installers are employees. Healthcare benefits, now profit sharing as well. So
Good.
reason I've really valued them, and I've worked for other companies before I was in this industry, a lot of small operations. So I've kind of seen a lot of great people, and even our installers, there's a lot of good people, our competition, there's a lot of good people in the industry. But I've found so much value in how they take care of us and how much we're trying to, of course, all take care of the customers. And we're not just, we do the installation and we're done. So we're connected for the life of that system, and I'll get more into that. Yeah, and a lot of referrals just from our personal customers. So, Linda Campbell is a customer of mine. So, I think we did your system back in 2017, was it?
I think so.
Yeah. So that was fun. So we work with every utility, and we're not a partner of theirs. We work with them like every installer does. So. Okay, so the state of Minnesota itself has, not everyone thinks, well, granted, it's a fair concern that do we get enough sunlight here in Minnesota to make it worthwhile? And so that's a very common question. How does snow factor in? Those are all very common things and things that we have to talk through and really look at realistically. So there's a couple different factors that make solar actually work. Now, you do have to have a good site. You do have to have the right amount of sunlight, not too many trees. We want to look at your roof line and other factors. But if you have enough light, great. Then the other factor is how much is the cost of electricity from the utility. So there's obviously environmental impact, there's financial impact. So even though you wouldn't think Minnesota automatically is a great site, great location for it, we do get enough sunlight. And the cost of electricity is not really high, but when we look at the comparison over time, in a lot of cases, as long as the site is good, there's some really good financial benefit. So that's the scope of actually what's been done here. Over 4,000 jobs, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's growing and growing and growing. And there's multiple installers. So again, a lot of those installers are just small operations. Just like an electrical or plumber or something like that. So, and then you'll have one or two like us that are much larger scale and growing. Yeah.
Are there, so like if you decide you want to go solar and you're through a certain electric company, can you just pick who you go through solar, or do some electric companies only want you to use one company or something like that?
Good question.
Great question. Yes. So for those and for the YouTube, for the video, the question is, does the utility have any say in who you can use to install your system? Right? Do they have any control over that? And the answer is no.
Okay.
So just like anybody building a home, any subcontractor doing that type of work, they do have to be licensed. So as long as they're licensed, and we are licensed electricians and licensed contractors. So we do have to go through the proper steps and get it approved. Everything has to be done to code. So there is inspections after the fact, but they can't say who can do it and who can't do the work. But they're not going to turn it on unless it passes inspections and passes code. All right, so why solar? Why control? That's kind of, talking about that big picture there. Environmentally, I think all of us most people are very well aware. So I definitely do love to talk about that. And what do we have as a resource from the utility? What's the most common resource versus what this is, which is renewable energy. But as far as the financial impacts, so control is about how do you control the cost, right? So there's a cost to electricity. You have a monthly bill. You are renting electricity from the utility. So let me put it this way, there's a lot of different ways that I try to think of explaining this. I probably don't have to. It's probably very self-evident, but over time, there's a cost difference between locking in your price and making your own energy versus continuing to buy that monthly bill, okay, or pay for that monthly bill. just like any other type of service out there. You have the choice of a monthly fee or one-time annual fee, right? Does anyone out there like to pay just the one-time annual fee instead of the monthly?
For electricity?
Well, not for electricity, but
Anything?
just in general,
Yeah,
yeah.
just think of your car insurance,
Right, exactly, yeah. And why do we do that?
because it's cheaper if you pay it up front.
Budget.
It's convenient.
It's convenient.
Budget
Yeah.
and budgetary concerns.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So and it is about the longer term benefit. All right, so the levelized cost of electricity is all about what is the cost of electricity from the utility over time. And can you actually control that? Can you lock in your costs and actually protect from all those cost increases and future potential costs from the utility? So there's certain things we can assume, there's certain things that we could expand on, but we try to be careful not to over-project. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't control what the PUC agrees to. But right now in the state of Minnesota, and this is pretty common actually, is the utility really does have a lot of control. In fact, it is a monopoly. Right or wrong, that's what we have. And there is the Public Utilities Commission that does actually regulate them and does control, Excel will come to them constantly, and every utility will come to them constantly saying, hey, we want to increase our rates by X amount. And then the PUC, and they usually will go ahead and imply or apply that increase. I have another article from the PUC, but they'll go ahead and actually add that to the bills and go ahead and make that change. And then the Public Utilities Commission can either say, no, you have to scale back. We're only going to allow a 4% increase, not the 11 you asked for. And then they have to go back and actually and make up for it with their customers. Or they are allowed that increase. So Minnesota Power up north gets larger approved increases than Excel and some of the co-ops do. But nationwide, the Midwest is actually the lowest rates in the country and lower than the national average. So, and it's been that way for a long time. So it's really, a lot could change because there are some good articles about the trends of future increases. It's like any other product out there. Supply, demand, other factors, what does adjust or affect that actual price? So that's something that's where we don't have any control over that. That's other people, right or wrong, and sometimes it's all, very legitimate, of course, but that's what their cost is and what gets passed down to the consumer. If you're able to lock in, if you're able to make your own, buy your own system, whether you finance it, whether you just pay for it up front, now you have a fixed cost for 25 to 40 years of that system life. Yes.
So do you know, like, where I live, like, our company, I think we're through Connexus or someone, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're putting in tons and tons and tons and tons of solar panels, solar arrays for that company. And it was through Sherco, I think is the name of the plant. Do you, or have you any knowledge about how much, like, them switching primarily over to solar would affect future rates? Would they actually go down because it's gonna be less energy for them to make versus nuclear or whatever they use?
Yeah. That's a tough question. And so all of these, so the question was, of course, these solar fields that are going in that are connected to the utility or a third party that then feeds the utility, feeds the grid. So obviously very valuable when it comes to, sorry, I was about to take a drink of coffee, I'll pause. Very valuable when it comes to more renewable energy out in the grid. More in the mix, a lot more value to all of us there. Cost-wise, I don't have a good answer on if that's going to affect the cost positively or negatively, really, when it comes to the grid and what's out there being provided and that mix. So there's obviously the cost of the installation, there's the cost of the equipment, there's, and then looking at how much energy does that actually provide. So certain areas, yeah, that might be a benefit, but in a larger scale market, I don't know. I don't know if it's really going to have any benefit financially. So that's one where time will tell. But they're also running out of space, so only so many of those.
You gotta factor demand going up, because they're building new houses too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's also a question of land and space, and this is a common question that I get when I go to farm conventions and stuff like that is, well, they're taking up all this farmland, and okay, you know, that's a valuable concern. So it's a question of how big can we actually go with those, you know, versus should we just put it on every building? You know, put it on your home, put it on the city buildings, put it on schools, whatever it might be, and just let them provide their own. So.
So on that previous slide,
Cheapest one,
Oh, yeah.
could you explain the colors,
the one back.
Yeah.
The map.
the map?
Yeah. Yeah, what's the difference between the red, the yellow, and the blue?
So I'm happy to share this. I don't remember, I'll be honest with you. So it has been a while since I
High-risk
looked at this
shortfalls
graph.
may occur at peak conditions, summer peak
There we go.
usage
Well,
demand.
high
Red,
risk.
red sounds like a dangerous color.
So high, yeah.
And
We're
we're
the
in the
red.
red.
So the red area is at high risk of shortfalls, which may occur at normal peak conditions.
Oh. Brownouts.
This is electrical reliability, in other words.
Yep.
Yeah,
Want
we
your
should
air
electric.
conditioning, if you want your air conditioning to run.
So even with new solar, even with these big solar fields, there's also the infrastructure. And our current infrastructure is outdated and does need upkeep. Even if it wasn't outdated, over time it's going to need upkeep. It's going to need to improve, whether it's for electric vehicles or not. You know, it does need that maintenance. So that's also the factor when it comes to the cost to the utility, and which is going to be passed on to the consumer. Okay.
More things relying on electricity.
Okay. So a real benefit, at least that we have when it comes to private solar doing it yourself, is incentive programs to help bring that cost down, pay you back for some of it, or potentially all of it. And that's what we've been, working with in our industry. So incentives come and go, just like any new product out there that they're, trying to increase the consumption for, but then once demand is there, they start to get rid of those incentives. Well, yeah, or the cost of electricity continues to go up and those incentives aren't as needed. So that's the other factor. So the tax credit, so there's a federal tax credit, there's a state policy, and depending on some utilities have a bonus rebate, some don't. Okay. But the first two are right now pretty much a guarantee for any project. So the tax credit will actually give you back 30% of the total project cost when you file for your taxes. And I won't delve too deep into that, but that's the general basics of it. And on state level, the state policy called net metering, and our state is one of the first, one of the last to still have that policy, requires that the utility actually pay you full retail rate if you ever send solar energy that you didn't use, you send that out to the grid, excess energy. So in general, and actually let's skip ahead a little bit. So yeah.
How long does it take you to get to that
So,
point
would you?
where you're selling energy back to the?
It can happen every day,
Okay.
every single day.
Okay.
So here's how it works. So solar is, whether it's on the roof, whether it's ground mounted, whether it's a pergola mounted carport, there's lots of different ways to actually install a solar system. Usually we're doing it on the roof. That's most common. That is creating that electricity, feeding it into your house. So you are using that electricity first. It's yours. You are still connected to the grid, however. You're not disconnected from them. So in a typical case, the grid is your backup power. But anytime if it's a beautiful sunny day, you're producing a lot of energy, you're not home or just not using as much energy, you might have a lot of excess. And that has to go somewhere. So that excess goes through the house, back out to the grid, and is properly tracked, and you're selling that to the utility. In other cases, you can have a battery storage. Now, battery is most of our customers that do it, they're doing it for power outages, for backup power. And you can also use it at nighttime, but if you have a battery now, that excess goes to the battery first, fills the battery, and then during a power outage, it'll automatically switch to the battery backup, so you're not out of power. If the battery's full, though, you can still send excess out to the grid and sell it. So that's a huge, huge benefit for that state net metering policy. Yes.
So if you have the battery backup and say, so then would that be what you'd be using at night too?
You can if you want to.
Or you could just say, we'll go back to the power company at night. And so our batteries are there if we have a power outage on a
Yes.
cloudy day.
You can do one or the other. You can do both. You can actually set it up in percentages and say, I want to keep 15%, maybe 50% of that battery, keep it there to store for power outages, and the rest I'll use at nighttime, and then refill it when solar's producing. So you can control that yourself at any given time with the app and be able to adjust that any time of the year. So you have full control.
It's not quite set it and forget it.
Well, but you don't with your heat anyway.
True.
You know,
Yeah, actually, most of our customers are using it for the furnace blower fan, fridges and freezers, and for sometimes water, if you have a well. And a lot of cases now, with the current sizing battery technology, we can back up the whole house. And you can then control what you are consuming from the battery, just kind of manage your what we call loads. And there's also other things. So beyond solar, we've grown into more of a smart energy solution. So we do battery installations. We do EV charging installations. We do smart electrical panels. So you can actually replace your existing panel with one that actually shows you your consumption on every single circuit breaker, from your phone app, and you can control, turn them on or off. You can actually see how much
turn
you're.
off the kids' TV downstairs.
Yes, exactly, exactly, yeah.
Boys' rooms, nobody did their chores today. Boom.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Would make you
Added
the power
bonus.
cords you leave plugged in.
I should talk about that more. Yeah, all right.
All those parents
You
who
had a
go to
question,
work
Greg?
and leave a list at
Yeah,
home.
so for the houses that have they use the battery for backup energy, are they lithium polymer batteries then, so they're not gonna be ginormous, huge bulky things?
Lithium ion has been the most common until now. Now it's lithium iron. So the battery units aren't that, well, relatively they're not that big. It might be the size of a large suitcase. And they are, with that chemical makeup, they're a lot safer than in just a home. Even before that, you had to actually penetrate the battery. So no, there's no off-gassing. It's much more safer for in a home. And we just need to make sure we're following codes with where it fits within the home and all that kind of stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that inside or outside the home?
Inside. Here in the Midwest, we will not install a battery outside. No matter who is telling us it works.
Does it matter like in an unheated garage versus throw it in the utility room in the basement kind of thing?
Depending on the battery, a garage is acceptable now. An unheated garage is acceptable. But we're not going to do it outside. So it is definitely looking at the home in particular. So just like when looking at a roof, let's assess the locations that are possible, make sure it does fit, it does work. And so there's a lot of cases where we can make it work. In some cases, like I have a customer who has a very small basement in St. Paul, and we can't make it work. So as much as we both want it to.
So all of this is going on the roof, typically,
Yeah.
from what I see. So if you have a roof that you're looking at replacing shingles in the next 3 to 5 years, then this would be a great time to start.
Yes.
We just did.
Yeah, and do you recommend, instead of doing it on shingles, you're gonna want the metal roofing? Because then you got a 40-year life instead of a 20-year life, so you don't have to mess with the roof under the solar panels as often, or?
That's a great question. Let's make sure, let's put a pin in that one. Let's make sure that I address that at the end. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, because there are conditions of the house essentially that we assess up front to make sure it does make sense, number one, at all, and number two, timing. So, and that's one of those factors. Okay, we talked a little bit about net metering and, and the other materials. So there's also, here's something that actually not everyone thinks about, but this is really, really important. Monitoring. This is your system, yours. You shouldn't just sit there and trust that the other company is going to be watching it and you're not doing anything, okay? We as a company are connected with monitoring. We're there, a full separate service team, we're there to help, okay? Whatever you might need. I talk to my customers when they're selling their home and said, bring me in. I want to help. I want to talk to your realtors, the buyer's realtor. Let's just explain the warranties that transfer over and other details and just make sure everyone's on board. And you get value out of it. But in general, as you, the owner, we need to make sure you fully understand how to monitor this yourself and what to look for. So as this shows, there's individual panel level monitoring. You can see how each individual panel is performing, and it's also a warning system. So it'll tell you if any single unit is not communicating, not reporting. And if we get notifications, but we're tied to a lot of projects. So if we haven't caught it before you, I always encourage my customers, check it so often, call me. Call me if you have a concern. Call us. We can set up a case with service. Sometimes it's just a matter of, it just needs to be resynced. You're fine, the system's still working. The monitoring just needs to be resynced. Okay. Yes?
Kind of a related, unrelated question. I'm hearing stories from fire chiefs. They're saying if you have solar panels on your roof, they will not go on your roof in a fire to ventilate, and as such, your fire insurance premium will go up. Is there any truth? Is that still factual?
It's not, yes and no. Yes and no. So I'm glad you brought that up. Do you mind if we cover that at the end as well? Do you mind? So the question's about firefighter access and insurance. Also really important topics that I try to cover in every assessment I do with a customer. So let's just cover that one right now. So the state of Minnesota, number one, for how we install a system on the roof, there are what's called the firefighter access code. We have to leave a path for firefighters on every single roof line to safely be up on that roof. Also, if there's an exit, like a window, we have to leave a path so that does not interfere with the safety of somebody getting out of their own home. Okay, so those are very important. We've also learned from firefighters that they don't want to be up on a roof anyways. That's actually an older way of fighting a fire. They really don't want to be up on the roof itself, creating a hole. So it's not as necessary plan, but it's still something, it is still code. So we have to apply by that, and that's what's done for every project. For homeowners insurance, okay? So your homeowners insurance, you want to make sure that's covering the panels, covering the system right from day one, okay? Because that is a product outside of your house. If it gets damaged from hail, for example, your warranties aren't going to cover that. No warranties would, but now your insurance can. It is really, really rare that solar panels get damaged by hail. It's tempered glass surface, they're really tough. It's not impossible. We've seen it happen, but it's very, very rare. Yeah. So, but in case that happens, you've got your insurance. But what's more important is you want to make sure that insurance is covering the installer if they have to remove the system because other shingles were damaged and your roof needs to be redone. I forgot to bring business cards. So I'll get them to Linda and then she'll pass them around.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah.
One quick question, because I had to leave for a minute. Did you cover, what effect does it have on your homeowner's insurance?
That's exactly what we're talking about right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah, no, good timing though. So your homeowner's insurance might go up to account for that. It might not. It's going to depend on your current coverage. You want to talk to your provider and really just talk to your agent about it. My home and half the homes I've done, zero cost increase.
Thank you.
Make sense? All right.
I have one of your systems, and yesterday my
Oh, thank you.
panels,
Sit down, John, wait till he's done.
how come they're so different on the bottom?
Good question.
Yeah, and I do have to get upstairs. So,
Okay.
quick answer.
Is this just today?
Yesterday.
Let's see, that's
Just
yesterday.
Does the snow on them make any difference?
Yeah, it definitely does. So, yeah. So my first question would be looking back over the days.
Yeah.
So what? I'm sorry. What was your name?
Julie.
Julie. So Julie was asking me. She's looking at her monitoring right now, and yesterday half of her system was not producing well, and the other half, the upper half, was, and so that can obviously happen. I looked back at the other days to see if this is a common issue or if it was just that one day. So it's not just the one day, but I see some days back here where all the panels are producing the same.
Yeah.
So it's most likely, in a case like that, number one, I ask and look at, well, was it tree shade? And
Just had all my trees trimmed.
nice, nice, all right. So it can be snow.
Yeah.
So snow will sit on solar panels.
Yep.
It will not just automatically slide off right away, but you have to go. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for asking. So it does slide off on its own. And honestly, it's something we don't want you to clean off. We want this to be a no maintenance type of system. You can clean off snow. If you do, we want to teach you the safe way to do it. But it will slide off on its own. It might be a week, might be 2 weeks, depending on somewhere in that range. If you have a really steep roof, it might be right away. But that way, we can give you a fair estimate of what to actually expect for solar production in the wintertime and not have to do anything, not have to do that physical maintenance or anything else. In reality, in the wintertime, you have very few daylight hours anyways, compared to the rest of the year. So we're really not losing as much as we're all afraid of because of snow. So the rest of the year, we're really going to make up the difference. And because we can sell back, we can actually bank credits that are 1-for-1 to help offset those winter bills for us because winter production is low.
Okay.
Well, since majority of people had to go, maybe we just do some more question and answers for now. Anyone want to know about?
I want to know about upfront costs, basically.
Okay,
That's
good.
what a battery would look like?
This is a battery. This is a battery. Yep. The one on, these are a little bit older model. They're actually a little bit smaller nowadays. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
yep. So this is a common, but most of them are only 7 inches deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
About like a car battery.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's exactly what the Tesla is. It's the exact same battery they have in their car as they have in this Powerwall.
So it doesn't necessarily have to sit on the floor. It could be on the wall, so it's a little bit more out of the way.
Yes.
Type of thing?
Yep.
Oh, that would make it quite handy.
This is that smart panel I mentioned where you can look at every individual breaker and see consumption on every breaker from your phone, turn them on or off. Better control too of how can you even just reduce your consumption and save money that way too.
Roughly how long does it take to get a break even on the cost of installation and what
Yeah.
you save on?
So there's some important factors there. So the question is payback. When are you going to get your money back? And another question that came up was, what's the general upfront cost? So let's talk about that real quick. So factoring in the current cost of electricity and projected cost increases is what I'm doing here. So we can give a fair picture of, for maybe an average, well, actually this one's pretty low, but let's say throughout the year, you spend $1,600 with Excel. Actually, let's just go for $1,200. Say it's $100 a month, right? So what does that up to over time? And what's a realistic range to consider? So we can start with what's the lowest increases we've seen over time historically, and then what's the more common current increases we're seeing.
Okay.
So it could be more, but this is a much more realistic approach. Let's just be careful Let's be more conservative and not over project and over promise. That's a big deal to us. When it comes to projecting how much solar you're going to produce as well, we want to be very careful not to overpromise. So the cost of electricity, depending on the cost of a solar array, depending on the size of your, or the amount of roof space you have, how much energy you need, those are all different factors. How much light is your roof line getting? What direction is it facing? What's the angle? But for price ranges, you could do a system starting out at, maybe $14,000 to $15,000 up front, earn 30% of that back from the tax credit, and potentially sell all of it if you weren't using very much energy. And then you can go up from there. I have Minnetonka customers that have systems that are huge, lots of battery backup, 6-figure projects. Your average homeowner, nowhere near that. So, and not even in the middle. So my home, my home was a $40,000 project. But when I break it down with financing, I actually found a plan where it's now worked out to be less cost per month than my electric bill was. And it's locked in. I can still pay it off at any time. So, but the question is, for that upfront cost, how long is that payback? What's that value going to be over time? And at least in a scenario like this, we can realistically give a range. We can say, well, conservatively, maybe it's 15 years. Best case scenario, maybe it's 8. So it's hard to say definitively because of these factors that can change. And if you have some tree shade, well, if a tree dies, now you have less shade, more production, you're going to make more energy, you're going to get a little bit faster return. So I'm not an advocate for telling people, hey, take this tree down, take that tree down. It's up to the individual. But we had a tree it was an emerald ash, it was an ash tree, had emerald ash borers disease, and we had to take it down. And that actually allowed me to really max out my home. So I wasn't too broken up about it.
About how long would solar panels last? A range.
Yeah.
Do they last for 30 years?
That's my home right there. Solar panels start with 25-year warranties.
Okay.
And the warranties are actually guaranteeing the efficiency of the solar panels. How much energy are they going to produce year over year? The one I have installed in my house, at year 25, I'm guaranteed to still have 90% of its year 1 production capability.
Okay.
So realistically, and that's now the common. So that at that time, that was a higher end panel. Nowadays, that's a little bit more common. But that is just the start of the warranties. You're probably going to have a 35 to 40-year lifespan of high enough production levels before it's worth replacing. All that free electricity. And some models, some brands, you'll have a 25-year parts warranty as well. They're all black nowadays, so they all blend in a little bit better.
Just out of curiosity, why do you have that empty space on the right instead of another panel there?
The stack. So this,
Because it looks like it would be able to go right up next to this stack.
it could, absolutely could. This is a west facing.
Okay.
Front of my house faces west. So the sunlight, as it gets lower on the horizon, that's going to start to cast shade right in here.
Okay.
So I chose not to put it there because of that shade. Now, big picture, it wouldn't have been so bad, but I also had limited how many panels I could put up and qualify for this bonus rebate. So that was the other factor.
Okay.
So you have none on the backside?
Nothing on the backside. The backside has way too much tree shade, as you can see here. But I did also fill out my south roof as much as I could. That's a very limited space.
Okay.
That actually is affected by some of this tree shade here. So that's not full production. This, based on its orientation and everything else, these two actually produce the same, surprisingly. So these are the factors that we actually dig into. What's the orientation? What's the pitch? What's the amount of sunlight? And then we can be more realistic on showing you what it's going to do, what it's going to produce, for how long, et cetera. And we now have the capability with drone scans to actually have a really accurate 3D model right from the start that also is a sun and shade analysis. So this home's wide open, brand new development, so there's no shade here. So you can see it's showing every panel is going to get a lot of sunlight. That's the colored circle there. But if there's a tree back here, we'll see the difference in sun access and therefore production out of maybe it's one panel, maybe it's 6 panels, you know. So it shows us that so we can at least be just as accurate as possible right from the start. So that's common practice for us now.
Okay. In 30 years, that tree might get in the way a little bit.
It could, yeah. So, oh wait, you mean the tree in the front?
Yeah, the tree, and I think that's actually the back. The tree that's right there by the patio.
This, right here.
Yeah, because look at where its shade will go. Once it get high enough, it's going to go right on that one section.
If it gets high enough, and it would have to get pretty high. So there is that potential. And that's the other factor that I like to talk through with homeowners. We know what the site is now, right? But let's talk about those trees. Let's see how if you know how tall it's supposed to get, you know, we just kind of talk through that. And we don't know for sure if it's going to be a problem, but make sure that everyone's aware.
Please take it into consideration.
Yep, absolutely.
With the closeness of your neighbor's house,
Yeah.
and if he's a 3-story and I'm a 1-story, have a huge effect also?
It can. It can. And so so the question is, if your neighbor has a 3-story home and you're only in single story, then, the factors there are in orientation. Is their house south of yours? Is it east of yours or west of yours? Is how far, like how close is that house? So that's where sometimes it can have effect, sometimes it doesn't. You know, if their house is to the north of yours, that's never going to affect you. And if it's to the east or west, then it might affect a certain portion of the roof line. But again, if the distance is far enough between the homes, maybe it doesn't. So those are all things, you know. There could be a water tower next door, you know. So at least realistically with modern, like the drone scan technology and the 3D modeling tools, we can see exactly if it is a factor or not. And then we use tools which actually track weather data. And this is a nationwide tool. What's the? It's called.
55330.
Thank you. So PV Watts Calculator is a nationwide tool for our industry. Anyone can jump into this. 55330.
Yep.
And the first thing it does is it pulls up weather data. Historical weather data from your area. And then it's up to me to plug in the right details of the system, the amount of watts, the type of panel, roof mounted, ground mounted, whatever it might be. Is there tree shade? Is there like nationwide, you know, there's different details that go into this to make sure we're just being realistic. Yes, in the Midwest here, we factor in snowfall into this type of number. And then the angle or pitch of your roof line and the orientation of the roof line. So all of these factor in before we can say, okay, how much energy might the system produce on your average year of weather? Some years will be greater, some years will be less, depending on weather. This last year, production's less for most of our customers. But we can at least be upfront about what you should expect out of it.
How do those two numbers, I don't understand the two numbers, solar radiation and AC energy. Is that what's off the grid?
Great question. I only look at AC energy. So AC energy is the actual amount of kilowatt hours that your system will produce, and which is what you're using in the house, kilowatt hours. So when you look at your electric bill, that's what they're charging you for, the amount of kilowatt hours that you used, that you had to buy from them.
But this shows what the system will produce.
Yep.
So you can compare your bill
Right,
to,
what
well, you have
your
enough.
bill actually says you've used
Yes.
or are using.
Yep. And certain monitoring technology will even get down to the level of showing you this is how much solar that you personally use, this is how much you sold back to the grid, and what your bill should reflect.
So it could also tell you if you've got so much shade or issues that you can't get enough solar energy to meet your demand, and it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Because every time I've plugged in our house to look at solar energy, it says you have too many trees.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's still true or not, but yeah.
The online tools that are available for everyone, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. They are getting better, but you might have.
And granted, this was a couple of years ago that I expect that the technology is getting better and better as we go along. So and it was, do we contact or not?
And that's the other factor as well. So as the technology progresses, do you need as much space as you used to? And so that it gets a little bit better, So the big factor is, because the incentives are so important, is how long are the incentives going to stick around? And some aren't. It's just a matter of time. So.
Do you have any record of what installation will do to the value of your property?
Yes. So I always try to be careful not to make promises, okay? Just be realistic. So solar, let's see what I have. I might have taken that out of this particular slide, but there are studies out there that show anywhere from 4% to 6% property increase, okay? And Zillow is probably the one that we refer to the most. Solar is, so here's another way to look at it though, okay? Just like we all know with the housing market, every area, every neighborhood is a little bit different, okay? It's not so easy to trust in the averages all the time. Solar is looked at as an appliance. It is a state law, it is not supposed to be in the assessed value and will not increase your property taxes. As an appliance, with those warranties that transfer over, I'm trying to think if I have something to show you. With those warranties for 25 years, they transfer over to the new homeowner. That new homeowner has a guarantee on the efficiency and therefore how much energy those panels should produce. Okay. They're also getting us in the package because we're still connected. We want to be there to service it if it needs it. So that's the package that they get, and a guaranteed amount of savings that they get minimum, at least. And so really, depending on what time that homeowner is selling, is it 5 years, is it 10 years? We can really sit down and look at actual numbers and say, if 5 years, you probably haven't paid off your system, so maybe you need another $5,000 to basically cover the extra cost that you had. And now you're at a wash. Is $40,000 in electrical savings worth spending $5,000 for the next homeowner? And it's just part of the mortgage cost. So that's usually a pretty easy answer. So that's I think a fair way to look at it. And that's the kind of conversation I always have is let's look at what you're actually getting, the warranties, the details. Here's the projection of how much it's going to save on the low end. Here's, and it could be more. And it's just all come together. So does that help?
Are the batteries also 25 year?
No, batteries are 10 years. Okay. Yep. Linda, yes.
Two things. One, I was surprised with my solar panels when they didn't increase my property tax. And I had a conversation because I was concerned. I just made a significant investment. did not change my property assessment. Now, the value we just talked about. The second thing is, Jeff, if someone is interested in finding out what would work for them,
I'm going to come a little closer, so you pick the microphone and pick you up.
so if someone is interested in finding out what would work for them, do you make them get a solar system if you do the analysis of their particular property? If it doesn't make sense for them?
Well, no, of course not. I mean, I know what you're trying to get at. So every assessment, so I mean, the question is, and Linda was explaining her experience with her property value not going up, and then asked about the assessment process and the commitment for homeowners. Assessments are always free. You know, that's what we're starting with. Let's make sure we don't want to waste your time if we can't be of help. So let's start there, free assessment. Let's find out if your property makes sense. Let's talk about your particular goals. You know, how long you're going to stay there? What are your financial gains you're trying to get? Or is it just environmental? But let's make sure we have a good fit. And then we can give you our recommendation, the price and everything else. Talk through the process, you know, solar, how long does it take to install? What are the details that we have to get approved? Whoops. There we go. And the steps that we take, you know, one step at a time to get this done for you. And if we're all in agreement, fantastic. You know, then we'll have a signed contract and get started. Again, once it's done and installed, then we switch to the monitoring and staying connected. And how are we there? What do you do if something comes up? How are we there to take care of you, whether it's a warranty thing or whether it's just the monitoring is out and needs to be turned back on. You know, sometimes it's just little things like that, but that's that step after that. Yeah, so you can always reach out to our company. I will bring or send some business cards. Sorry, I forgot to bring mine. I just had a new batch.
Do you know the main office number off the top of your head? I don't know mine.
I don't, because I always just give people my personal cell phone. And but you can reach out to me directly. You can reach out to me through Linda as well. So either way, and
I got the information.
yeah, yeah. And my name is Jeff, so you can just ask for Jeff or a meeting with Jeff. I'm the only Jeff there that does the meetings. So.
Thank you.
So, no, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you showing up, and hopefully this was really good, helpful information.
It was, yeah.
Really was.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.